Am I just a jaded person? Andrew has become so jaded, he doesn't even like beaches anymore. Aloha and welcome back to Wanderous. I am your host, Andrew Crusoe, and they are building a road behind where I live. And there is a cat bulldozer, and it's real fun. But that's not why today is a special episode. Today is a special episode because this is an all-out Flores, Indonesia extravaganza where I see aliens that I've never seen before. Come along with me. Now, I want to reassure you that I will be returning to the regularly scheduled program wherein I cover Istanbul and all of the magical things that happen there, funny things that happen there too. And that, of course, led into going to Kathmandu, which was my first city ever in Asia, the first time I was ever in Asia, and all of the amazing things that happen in Asia. But today, I just got to share this, you guys. I got to share the pretty magical experience that I had just 2 days ago. I don't usually share a story when it's so fresh. So this is a bit of a experience. I haven't had a ton of time to reflect on it, obviously, but I just felt like doing something a bit different this week. And of course, that still aligns with the mission of this show, which is to encourage you to go outside your comfort zone, to inspire you to try new, interesting experiences, and hopefully leave your country, leave your home country, because it's such a big world. That's part of the mission of this show. Now, those of you who get my beautiful email updates know that I've been living on the gorgeous island of Flores for over 6 weeks. And it's been a growth experience. It's been definitely a different perspective on Indonesia as a country. People are very, very sweet here. They have less exposure to tourists compared to Bali. So it changes the dynamic a little bit. Of course, one of my biggest missions while being here is to see some of the amazing wildlife that's only found in this part of Indonesia. And the most famous example of that is the Komodo dragon, of course. Now, I wanted to do something a little edgy. I wanted to go to an island called Rinca, which also has the dragons and is more wild. It's part of Komodo National Park, which covers 3 islands. And, I talked to people, I talked to the laundry company I was using, and they're like, oh, we can look into it. And waited a week. This guy knew everybody, worked for a tour company. He said, we got to get 4 people in order to get the price somewhere reasonable. And I was looking into it. I felt into it, and I looked into the pricing. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, it just wasn't worth it. That wasn't worth it for to be only going to one island. It wasn't worth it. So I decided to go the more traditional route and went with a boat company that goes to 6 places in one day. And I'm really glad I chose this. I'm really glad I went with this. So let's talk about what this experience was like to go to 6 places around Komodo Island, including Komodo Island in one day. There are 2 options usually. There's a slow boat and a fast boat. The slow boat will take 3 hours to get to Padar Island. Padar Island is right next to Komodo Island. People love to stop there. You've probably seen photos of Padar Island. It's this island that comes out with 3 sort of long stretching mountainous arms of the island coming out, expanding behind the person who's the subject of the photo. It's a very famous place. It's one of probably the most famous spot for Instagram photos in all of Indonesia, besides Kelingking Beach, which is the Tyrannosaurus head-shaped beach on Nusa Penida. It's extremely famous. And I do recommend going in the first half of the year, because if you go during the wet season, which technically is cusp of the wet season, the whole island is super green and beautiful. If you go toward the middle and end of June, from June until November, the whole island is brown. And I have a friend who's only been there when the island is brown. I honestly think that going in May, which is May now, is probably the sweet spot, because It's technically kind of dry season, depending on who you ask. It still rains sometimes, but the island is still green. It hasn't dried out yet. So you get the good weather, but the island is still green. That's my first travel tip for this episode. But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. I was a little bit disappointed. The customer service overall was good. I'm not going to name the boat company. I think it's generally, this is the experience for most of these companies. You want to look at TripAdvisor, you want to look at Google Maps. There are plenty of places where people have left reviews, and the company I went with had good reviews. In fact, they enjoyed talking to me so much when I was booking my ticket that they asked for a photo. Yeah, and that's something that you will experience more if you come to Flores, is they're just more excited to meet foreigners, you know? So the only thing that was a little bit sticky, there's two good things just in getting on the boat itself that I'll share. The cool thing was that when you go for the fast boat, which is, you know, if you look around, it's usually about 250,000 rupiah more. It ends up being that's like 15% more. It's not much more to do the fast boat. And the fast boat only takes 1 hour to get to Padar Island, which is right next to Komodo, and it's like another 15 minutes to get over to Komodo Island. So because of that, of course, you have more time to go to places. The slow boat, I think they only go to 3 places. With the fast boat, you go to 6 places, and all of them are, maybe with the exception of the last one, which is sort of like a bonus one, you could say, they're all really amazing spots. But so there's a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is when you go with the fast boat, the bonus for the fast boat is they actually pick you up. If you're in Labuan Bajo, which is the town where the port is, you know, where most people, if you're staying in Flores, you're probably staying in Labuan Bajo or Batu Cermin, which is 1 mile, 1 kilometer away. And they'll pick you up right in your hotel or your accommodation or wherever you're staying, which is really cool. And they communicate through WhatsApp, of course. And, you can send your location on WhatsApp, and it's very groovy. The whole thing is really groovy, but you gotta be ready. They come at 6:30 in the morning, and I had pre-packed everything the night before, and they come with the van, and we navigate the traffic. Not too much traffic that early in the morning. There's not too much traffic here in general in Labuan Bajo, to be frank. And they take us in, and we get to the weird port building, and they lead us through a series of places to be led through. And it was a bit confusing, to be honest, because there's a lot going on. There obviously are a lot of boat companies doing this. There's probably like 5, at least, major ones. I would recommend also, it's probably better to do this in terms of crowds. Probably even a bit better if you do it in April. Like the first week of May, which I would learn, is actually, obviously May 1st is Labor Day in most countries in the world. And that week is also a big vacation week for people in China and other countries around because it's Labor Day. So the first funky thing, though, that I encountered with all of this, everything was going fine, but the first funky thing was we were kind of huddled into groups, and each of us had to take a photo of our boarding QR code from our guide's phone. I don't know why. This was the goofy thing. I don't know why they couldn't just send us the QR code on WhatsApp, but this was their system. It was a little clunky. I didn't really understand why they did it this way. So we have a bit of audio here. I took a lot of video of this. So we made our way closer to the actual port. There was a big Pelni ship. I don't know if you know about Pelni. Pelni is like their inter-island ferry. It's a huge boat. It's like 3 or 4 floors. And there are people placed around the port with flags. Each company has its own flag. And we were told pretty early on, oh, your boat, this is the name of your boat. You get on the boat and, it's pretty comfortable. They're they're leather seats or whatever. And the guy proceeds to explain to us where we're going and what to expect. And we are on our way. We are on our way over the sea. It was a pretty smooth ride overall. It was a beautiful day. One of the reasons I chose the day that I chose was that the weather forecast had a big sun icon on it. Now, one of the employees actually told me that even if it's rainy on Labuan Bajo, on Flores Island, where I'm staying right now, often the weather over in Padar and Komodo Island is much drier. I mean, there's definitely the microclimate effect that happens here. So it was pretty cool, though. It was pretty cool looking at my little GPS blue dot on my Maps app and seeing us kind of navigate, because there are dozens of little islands and little interesting spots just as you go make your way out. It's about 40 kilometers from Labuan Bajo, where you're going. So after about an hour, we arrived in the port of Padar Island and docked with the pier there. There was a small little bathroom in this covered area, and the trail that led to the right, which I soon discovered was incredibly... It was pretty steep, to be honest. I sort of expected this, so I took a moment to sit and eat my breakfast, which I'd made the night before. I made oats, of course, and with banana and little things. And I just sat, and there was already a fair amount. There were like 2 groups that were already there. And I sat, and I didn't care what anybody else was doing. I was going to listen to my body. I was going to listen to my own rhythm and figure this out. Just go with my inner voice, my inner gut feeling. So anyway, having been completely separated from my group now, I thought I would run into someone else, but I didn't. I started heading up the rather steep, very green trail that led to the top of Padar Island. And I was pretty happy with it, mostly because they had actually invested in good stone steps. They'd actually invested in a good trail that wasn't too bad. It wasn't too bad. There were parts that were sort of narrow. Occasionally there's a queue, so you wait for the queue. And even halfway up, you start to get the classical, you start to get the view that you've probably seen pictures of. And you can see several bays. You just see this, it's almost like a octopus or something. The island is like a living green octopus just rising out of the ocean. It took me not too long to get to the top, and I stopped in several spots to get a photo because I probably would never come back here. Of course, there were people trying to find their groups. There was Manta group and Camera group, and that sort of goofed up the ambiance a little bit, because you're trying to appreciate this incredible view spread out below you. And there are guides just shouting XYZ group, XYZ group. I wish they could figure out a better system for that, just say, hey, I have the green, because they had flags. Say, hey, I have the yellow flag. If you don't want to be abandoned, follow the yellow flag. But people get disoriented, and I think that's why a lot of the video that you see of these places, you don't get the audio. People add their own music. Of course, I took panorama. You got to take a panorama. All of these photos will be available for the supporters of the show for $10, for just 10 American dollars per month, and you can cancel anytime. You get behind-the-scenes photos and occasionally video from all of the episodes of this show. I release bonuses every single episode, except for the very, very special After Dark episodes that only people on the New Frontier get. I would say I do one of those per month, and those are also very, exclusive and special. But I provide bonuses. I love providing the bonuses. I talk about this every episode, but I know people who join, this might be your first time listening to Wanderous. If it is, welcome. Thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to learn about something that's new. Learn about a place that's new that you may not have heard. I share my authentic experiences, not the sugar-coated BS. I share the whole story. And I share my frustrations too. It's very important to me to have journalistic integrity and to be honest about my experience. And occasionally I will have constructive criticism, or quite a bit of constructive criticism about where I go, especially if the crowd management is very bad. A lot of these places that I go have been around for a very, very, very long time. And it's really no excuse for some of these places to be mismanaged or to just be chaotic. It's really no excuse. And honestly, even from a crude capitalistic perspective, if you organize the groups better, you could have more people go through and you make more money. But I digress. I spent a little while on the top. I got up there at about 9:30, and of course they told us, like, oh, we're leaving at 10. So I had to really monitor my time. They were very nice people that'll take your photo, and there are signs along the edges. There are steep edges that'll say, stay back from the edges, stay back from the cliff, be careful, be careful. The people watching was pretty entertaining too. But I look at my phone, and I've got like 10 minutes to get back down. So I'm like scrambling down this hill as I took a little bit too much time with the photos. So I started scrambling back down. And before I knew it, we were back. We were back in the boat. We were zipping along the sea. I really appreciated the fast boat. I can't imagine how tedious and slow not having... There were 3 very large Honda, they're not a sponsor, boat motors pushing this sucker. We were going quite fast. It lived up to its name. It was a fast boat.
Because of bacteria, make them different color. Yeah, and we are here 1 hour and 20 minutes.
So for some reason I think I know why, and you'll find out. The next place we stopped was another part of Padar Island. We went kind of around the cove, and we stopped at the Pink Beach. And here's where the not sugarcoating it comes in. The Pink Beach was pretty much a disappointment. And there are reasons for that. So apparently, we get off, and I'm like, where is this it? I wasn't sure if that was it. And there was also no pier. We had to sort of jump off the boat. The water was above my knees. Got my shorts a little bit wet. They really also encouraged us to take off our shoes. Okay, fine. I did not, because I'm contrarian. And I also was like, the sand is going to be hot. It's probably going to be, So I have these sandals that were custom made for me in India that are probably about to die, but they're still doing all right. They're these like brown, like very durable, and they have Vibram soles. Like the materials are good, but I've put a lot of, they've had many tens of thousands, probably a couple 100,000 steps by now. But I wanted to have my sandals, which honestly looking back, I could have left them on the boat. The sand wasn't hot. I'm so used to the beaches being crazy hot, and I'm not really on a beach at 9. Well, at this point it was 10 a.m. But I was thinking, we're getting into the middle of the day. This could be really hot. You know what? Sand wasn't hot. I would have been fine. That's one of the few things that would have changed. But I jump off and I look at the situation from another angle. I look back at our boat, which again, there's 3 or 4 boats just kind of anchored, just floating around in this little bay. And now I see, oh yeah, there is a pinkishness. There's a pinkishness mixed in with the white sand of the beach. And I found out in my conversations with people and wandering around that the reason there wasn't much was that it was high tide. And of course, high tide comes at a certain interval, which is not the same interval as a 24-hour day. It's a little more complicated than that, depending on where you are. So it's really just the luck of the draw. You might get there at high tide, you might get there medium, it might be low. If it's low tide, apparently you see a lot more basically red sand particles. So that's I think one of the only spots, well, besides the fact that besides the last place I went, which was very scary, which we'll get to, that was one of the few kind of bummers, was we went there at high tide. This was not a town. This was a very tiny camp that had just been set up for the Pink Beach. And there were perhaps only 4 kind of largest canopies set up with, bamboo supports that were vendors, basically little warungs, little diners that were set up to have food. It was just totally set up for tourists. And I even talked to one of the vendors who was trying to sell these wood-carved Komodo dragons, these little Komodo dragon figurines, which were pretty cool. But I knew that if I bought one, it would break. It would break in my pack. I like to travel really light, and I was just not having a full body yes to getting one of those, so I let it go. But I got to practice my sedikit bahasa, my small amount of Indonesian language knowledge. And it was really fun, actually. Once you start to get into a language, it's really fun to actually practice it. And I have enough vocabulary now where we can talk about where he lives, and I can talk about, like, do you live here? And I found out he lives on Komodo Island. Not very many people live on Komodo Island, but it makes sense, right? It's like a 15-minute boat journey. And I kind of turn the corner, and I come across two deer hanging out with big antlers. And I'm going to look up this specific species of this deer. Now, the deer also live on Komodo Island, and that's one of the reasons why the Komodo dragons live there, is the Komodo dragons eat the deer. Really beautiful deer, though, these like light brown, and they were so chill. I took some video of that as well. They were so chill. You could almost feed them. If I had food, I would have been able to feed them. They were just hanging out right next to the tent where one of these little diners was. So I almost liked seeing the deer more than the freaking beach, which was funny. It is funny to people watching these things, though, because everybody's very excited. And I know, I mean, full disclosure, having lived in Hawaii, which you may be aware, I lived in Hawaii across 2 different time periods for a total of about 5 years. Like a beach like that, it's really cool, but I don't like lose my mind over excitement for a beach like that anymore. I've spent a lot of time in places like that, and I really appreciate them, but I'm not going to like take 30 minutes of video and do like a bunch of Instagram boomerangs like some of the people there were. It was cute. And I was like, carpe diem. But it was sort of like, oh man, I had this moment where I'm like, am I just a jaded person? Andrew has become so jaded. He doesn't even like beaches anymore. But that was just what I was feeling in the moment, and that's fine. I did, of course, take some video of the beach. I got a picture of me holding, some of the red sand grains, and I even asked permission to take a small piece of red coral, which reminded me of another piece of coral, and I couldn't place it at the time. And now I've remembered that I got a similar piece of coral on a beautiful tiny, tiny island called Gili Air. Air is the Indonesian word for water. It's spelled like air. Tell me that isn't confusing. But Gili Air, which is how they pronounce it, is a tiny island that you can walk around just walk around the whole thing. It's 90% beach. You can walk around it in 1 hour. You probably do it in less than an hour if you were walking faster. And it's right off the coast of Lombok, and I went there last year, and I found a very similar piece of coral. So this red coral it's around. It hangs out all around the Indonesian islands, and occasionally it will break. It'll be in the right place, and the waves will break it up, and you'll get these pink beaches. There are more than one. There's a pink beach on Padar Island. There's also a pink beach, according to Google Maps, there's a pink beach on Komodo Island. Unfortunately, we didn't go to that beach on Komodo Island, but we did have a very nice time on Komodo Island, which I'll get to. But before that, we had lunch. So we had a cool little lunch. We had at the long table, I had my vegetarian option, and I met some of the people, actually got a chance to talk with some of the people on the same boat that I was on. And I learned that about 90% of them were from China, because that week was a very big vacation holiday week in China, also connected to Labor Day. And I'll tell you, these were some of the sweetest, cool Chinese people I've ever met. I was so kind of impressed, and also met one followed each other on Instagram kind of thing, and just had these really cute conversations, and their English was good. The Chinese people who actually travel, internationally, their English is often quite good, not always, but often quite conversational and quite functional. And the Chinese people, they study very hard. And the islands around here are some of, I think, probably the most beautiful islands near to China, to be honest. Indonesia has over 17,000 islands, in the country itself, and most of them are uninhabited, including basically Padar. I mean, nobody lives on Padar Island. So yeah, it was about over an hour, and after that, we got back on the boat. And I was a bit nervous because, like, oh gosh, how deep? They pulled the boat in a little bit more, so my shorts didn't get quite as wet this time. I mean, it wasn't much. It was like a few centimeters of like the bottom of your shorts getting them wet, but it's part of the adventure, right? You're getting a little bit wet, but not too bad. And after just 15 minutes of cruising around, we docked with a very, very, very long pier and arrived on Komodo Island. I swear to God, this pier was like a kilometer long. It took us like 5 or 6 or 7 minutes to walk. Maybe not a kilometer long, but it felt like it was very, very long. And we get up, and you get to the big sign, the whole presentation, Komodo Island National Park, Komodo National Park, and there's a sign, and it's very uneventful actually. Besides the sign, the flora of Komodo Island is not impressive. It's kind of just scrubby, and I could tell it was getting prepared for the dry season. It was, in fact, the trail they were walking along had huge cracks. You could tell that it regularly dried out completely and had these deep cracks in the dry soil. And the guide explains to us there are 3 trails. We're going to do the short one today. We don't have time to do the medium or the long, which is kind of my only other regret for this whole thing. And we're going through, and we're going in though. It's a while. It took us about 5 or 6 minutes to get to this opening. Now, I had very low expectations of Komodo Island, and I'll tell you why. It behooves you to do some research. It behooves you to, frankly, look this up on YouTube and watch other people's experience. When I looked at this, the impression that I got was actually false. I got a false impression that it was like, it's a 3-minute walk from the beach, and I got the impression from some of the videos that there were not that many trees on Komodo Island. That's not true. But some of the impressions that I got were correct, which is that you're lucky if you see a Komodo dragon, and don't expect the Komodo dragon to be too animated. They're pretty slow moving until they're not. The Komodo dragons can strike, they can move quickly, but they save their energy. They're cold-blooded, They're not hyper like us. The other impression I got from watching YouTube videos, and the reason why my expectations were very low, was that it just seemed very domesticated. I mean, it's not quite the right word, but it seemed like, they've done this trail a million times. The Komodos know what to expect. There's no mystery, which is true. There isn't much. I mean, there's some, like, you're not guaranteed to see anything. This is a wild animal, but it's not like you're going on a safari in Chitwan, which is an experience I will talk about on the show in the future. It's not really a safari. It's a trail loop where you're going to stop in a clearing where Komodos like to hunt, which is fine. It's a covered clearing. It's fine. But it's not like coming across a rhinoceros, right? There's not like it's not electrifying. So don't expect to be electrified, especially if you've seen a Komodo dragon in a zoo before. This is just me, just like managing your expectations, right? But we turn around the bend, we get into the clearing, and there is a massive Komodo dragon. It's like 3 meters long, big tail, hanging out under a tree, not moving very much. And the guides are very attentive because, as I learned, they are very liable if someone gets hurt. And as one of them reminded us, there are no doctors on that island, which I actually have trouble believing. I feel like they probably have some first aid, but there's not a hospital on Komodo. There's just not enough people. I mean, I think there's like maybe 100 people who live on Komodo. It's a very hyper-local, it's a park, like it's a reserve. So they're trying to protect these animals. Komodo dragons, they don't live in that many places in the world. Now, I did find out in my research for Rincha that there are places where a few Komodo dragons actually live on Flores, but it's tough to get to. They're really deep. They're deep in the forest, and they're harder to find than on Komodo Island. That's another reason why I went with this experience, because I won't have to, get on a bike and scour around some goofy backlot forest thing and hope that I see something, and just, it's technically more dangerous to be going around alone on a bike in the middle of nowhere than to be doing this, of course. So you have to figure out your own cost benefit for these kinds of things. But the guide sort of made a perimeter, said, don't go closer to here. These are really, really dangerous. And we got an angle. We figured it out where people would sit, sort of crouch, like a few meters behind, like safe distance, like 10, 12, 15 feet, 3 meters or 5 meters, whatever, behind the animal. And you'd give the guide your phone or your camera, of course. And I was very pleasantly surprised how good. He took like 5 photos of me, and I was like, this is great, because I'm probably never coming back here again. So this is the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and he did a great job. But yeah, we all got photos, and they turned out great. And then afterward, I also got yelled at, which was interesting. You take one step. I took one step too close to the Komodo, and they are on it. They're like, stop, turn around. I thought I was a safe distance. I was 3 meters away from this thing, maybe 4 meters away. Still, they're like, no, you're too close. You're too close. So I appreciated that. I appreciated how attentive they were. I wish they would have been as attentive in the last place we visited. We'll get to that. But it was cool because after the photo op, he hung around and he answered questions about the Komodo. He answered questions about, where do they eat? What do they eat? When are they active? And these are all things that you can look up, of course, but they're cold-blooded. So it really, their level of activity really varies throughout the day. It depends on how warm things are. And the fun fact, the thing that I thought was pretty cool, people were asking him, how often does the Komodo dragon eat? Now, what do you think? I'm going to let you guess in your own mind before I tell you. Did you guess once per month? Pretty wild. Their metabolism is so slow that they eat once per month, and they can't chew their food. They eat their food whole. They swallow their food whole, and as the guide said, they swallow their food whole just like a big snake. So there you go. To be frank, though, the whole time this Komodo that we'd been watching had scarcely moved. It turned its head a few times, but I felt like it was just taking a nap. I must confess, I did feel a bit disappointed. I was like, okay, I mean, you can't have high expectations for a cold-blooded animal. It's tough for them. They're not going to be hyper, like I said. And I asked him if it was possible for us to do a little more of the trail, and they said, no, you'd have to, we'd have to have more time. It'd cost you more. And I was like, oh man, they didn't even ask me. That's one of my, I don't know how that works. I mean, I guess it depends on the company, but the company never asked me if I wanted to do the longer trek, because I would have gone on a different boat. I would have hung out on Komodo Island for a couple hours instead of hanging out on Pink Beach for an hour and 20 minutes, which was not the best use of our time. That's probably the only itinerary change I would have actually done. But Komodo Island still had one little surprise in store for us. As we were heading back and pretty much shuffled through the merchandising section, which is exactly what you might think. A very, very, very large tent with dozens of vendors. We just kind of like got shuffled through, and you can buy all the things. Again, I wasn't inspired by any of this. I already had my piece of red coral, which was all I needed. All I need. And as we were heading back to the pier, they stopped us. Oh, wait. And there was a younger Komodo dragon hanging out right on the beach. It was pretty cool. It was hanging out under a tree. And somebody asked the guide, how old is this one? And we found out that it was 10 years old. I think he said it was a female. And this one was more active. I don't know why, maybe because it was younger. And it was looking around at us, and I think it took a couple steps. And people were taking pictures with it, of course. But it was really cool because we got to see, this one was like, I don't know, it wasn't like huge. The other one, it seemed like it just had a huge meal. This one was more like toned, and this one was actually, I would be more nervous running into this one because this one looked like it would move quickly, if you gave it an opportunity to strike, And then we heard, oh God, trigger warning. Then we heard one of the people I was talking to on the trip. She said that she heard that sometimes they eat babies. And I was like, what? Who's leaving their baby like unattended? And she said, well, I don't know. People just get too close for photos. I don't know. I don't know what to make of that story. I mean, I'm sure it's like happened in the world, in history. But then should I Google this? Should I find out how many? Am I going to get on a list if I Google how many babies been eaten by Komodo dragons? I don't want to know. If you find out, leave a comment for this episode. Wherever you listen to this episode, you can comment. I really, really super appreciate comments. On YouTube, you can leave a comment. On Spotify, you can leave a comment. And on Apple Podcasts and where else people listen to this stuff. You'll figure it out. I read all the comments. I get all the emails. I get all the notifications. And let me know how many, if you want to. I am curious, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. And I know if I look that up, I'll go down a rabbit hole. And that won't be good for anybody. It all passed by too quickly. So we got back on the boat. I took a video leaving the thing. We got back on the boat and we zipped over to a place called Taka Makassar, not to be confused with the town of Makassar on the island of Sulawesi. I need to find out what the word Makassar means. But essentially, Taka Makassar is it's a sandbar. It's an almost island, is what I would call it. Presque île, the French might say. Although I think that's a totally different thing. But literally, you could say that. And this sandy bar was 90% white, broken up coral, white sand. Very shallow, gorgeous cyan, cerulean water. The sun is overhead. It's great weather. It's ideal. It's cherry. And we can choose from any fins that fit us. It's a whole thing. It's great. I got a mask that ended up kind of hurting my nose. But it worked. I can deal with the mask for like one day. But at some point, I need to get a mask that fits my face properly. Do I have a weird face? I don't know. Maybe I do. Whatever. I'm, as the Big Lebowski would say, I'm just as God made me, sir. Is it, or was it the dude that said that? I don't remember. But I sort of step onto this sandbar, which is mostly white sand with a few red particles, and put on my fins. And there are several other boats around. And I have my Olympus TG6. I didn't want to bring my phone in. The phone is too important. And I have this TG6, which if you know about my work, I've had this for a while. I did a 100-day YouTube thing where I did a video every day for 100 days, like 4 years ago with this when I first got it. It's a great camera. Olympus should be a sponsor because I could sing the praises of this camera all day. It's a great camera. It shoots in RAW. It shoots in 4K. The only thing I don't like about it is it only shoots 30 frames a second. And I really like 60 frames a second 4K when it comes to animals, but it's still pretty good. It's capable of going to 15 meters in depth. So you can take it even on light scuba experiences, apparently. And there's this woman who's from France or Spain. She's from both, actually. And I was like, do you see anything? She was just swimming around. We had talked earlier, and she's like, I saw a baby shark. I'm like, no way. And we head off to find this baby shark. And, the bottom of this is really, honestly, quite photogenic. Like, it's just this white sand. And the water was clear, thank goodness. And I saw this sort of like black-tipped, really graceful baby shark. And, of course, I'm holding my camera with one hand and trying to, swim and balance with my feet. The fins help quite a bit if you ever do this. Now, I've done this before. I did a version of this when I swam with dolphins in Hawaii, which is a video on YouTube that I will put in the show notes. The show notes are available wherever you're getting this show. They're either in the YouTube description, or they're in the Spotify description, or in the description in your app. And I'll go ahead and include that video, because that was, until this day that I'm talking about now, was the most incredible snorkel experience of my life. This experience rivals it for reasons that we'll get to. And yeah, I got some videos of this really adorable shark. It zipped, we hung out with it for like a minute, but they're built for the water, obviously, so it zipped away. But I'd never seen a shark, believe it or not. I'd never seen it clearly. I thought I saw one like a brief blink of an eye once when I was in Hawaii, but this is the first time I ever saw a shark clearly in the water. We kept our distance. I didn't want to stress it out. I try not to stress life forms out if I can help it. And yeah, wonderful shared experience. And then as I'm zipping around, I'm kind of making my way around, and it feels good. It feels good to be back in the snorkel mode. I hadn't done a real snorkel experience. I had done one a week before in shallow water here in Flores, and it's just not the same in shallow water. It's just really tough. It can be tough to find a good place to snorkel right off the coast. And I did find a place right off the coast here in Flores, but it wasn't great. So this was my first real snorkel experience since Hawaii, I suppose. I hadn't really swam in a large body of water since the Mediterranean in 2022, when I did the Calanques, when I went to Calanques-sur-Meaux, which you may remember if you've been listening to this show for a while. So it was great. It felt like coming home. It felt like there's just a very relaxing energy to being in the ocean, especially when it's warm, maybe only when it's warm. And the water was pretty warm. The water was like 28 degrees Celsius. It was in the 80s if you prefer Fahrenheit. It felt like it was in the 80s. It might have been like high 70s, but it was comfortable. It was comfortable. It was great. And I start just exploring around this weird, sandbar that's all white sand. And I see this goofy object. I see this glinting silvery object. And at first I thought it was like a large silver fish. Of course, it was an anchor. I didn't know. These anchors were all very new. So I was like, what is this thing? Oh, it's a stainless steel anchor. And I could hear, because of course, water conducts sound differently, actually better than air does. And I could hear the sound of this dragging across the sandy bottom. And I won't lie, in that moment, I felt a lot of, I don't know what it was, regret that human beings are often very ignorant of their impact when they go to these places. Regret, and I don't know, I just wondered how many things have been torn up by these anchors over the years. And that's why it's so important that we protect the coral reefs we have, because it's so easy to damage and screw these things up. At some point, I'd like to network with, there's a good organization that I'm totally blanking on the name of at the moment, but there are very good organizations that actually grow coral. They actually go out and protect coral, and they fight for legislation to protect coral, because these places are fragile. They're not evolved to deal with the big honking piece of stainless steel ripping through. How would you like it if a creature larger than you, can you imagine a piece of stainless steel to scale, if it was a car, just a large knife of a car coming through your house? That's kind of like what that is for the things that live there. So we have to be careful. We have to be aware and not just, drop our anchor anywhere. I don't know. That was the feeling that I got in that moment. And I, went around. I had to go under a lot of ropes, because every anchor had a rope. There was a couple ropes I would dodge under. And then I saw a hawksbill sea turtle chilling and eating some kelp on the bottom of the sea. And it was really going to town. I was really having a good time, and I got some video of that, and that was really pretty nice. But the best part of this trip, I would say easily, would be stopping in Manta Point. We get out, and they're pretty on it. He's like, okay, we got like a half an hour here, something. It wasn't that much time. And whoever wants to go, get your stuff now. We're getting out. We're here. We have limited time. Let's go. And there's no guarantees. There's no guarantees. And he gets a life preserver. He gets one of those, rings, a big red ring. And he sort of guides us around. There's maybe 5 of us. A lot of people didn't get in the water. Some people did. I was maybe 7. And he sort of leads us around, and then he points. And I look down. And this is a deep area. This is the deepest area we've snorkeled so far. Maybe 15 meters deep. And I look down, and I see this black triangle, this scepter of night fly under me. These 2 protruding horns, what they call cephalic horns. Cephalic? Yeah, cephalic. These 2 horns that are, sensing organs. And the eyes behind them are very small, very hard to see the eyes. And they're just flying. They're flying through the water. I see 1, I see 2, I see 3. They're huge. They're huge. They're like 2-3 meters across, more even. And we were just transfixed. We were transfixed watching these graceful, massive, not as massive as, it wasn't a humpback whale, but these things were bigger than I thought they would be. They were pretty big. And they were clustering and sort of swimming in circles below us. We couldn't pull our eyes away. I'm turning around, we're trying to follow everybody. And the most difficult part was that once you find a manta ray, everybody sort of clumps, together. So you have to avoid people's fins and things. It can be vaguely dangerous if somebody kicks you. People were pretty chill. They weren't moving too fast, but I just wanted to get away from this group and sort of swam around and got a different angle on it. And I looked down and I counted 7 of these graceful, fascinating, almost otherworldly creatures. And I was very struck by their tails. They have very narrow tails. They almost look like stingers. I don't think they're used that way. But there were these sharp, like swords. They were like swords coming off the back. They didn't taper in the way that you might expect. It was just these sword-like structures. And I found out later that that's how you can figure out their sex. The males have these clasper bits. They've got an extra bit. And the females don't. So you can spot that if you want to look up that. That's a little tip. It's one of the few ways you can accurately figure out the sex of a manta ray. And we just sort of lost track of time, I suppose. But after a while, we were there for maybe 20 minutes. After a while, he was like, well, we got to go. We got one more place we have to be, and it's getting late. But I felt very satisfied just to be able to watch these beautiful creatures, to share the water with them. And at one point, one of them sort of came a bit closer to me. He was coming up, started surfacing. And I was like, is this thing curious or do I smell good? I don't know what's going on. I didn't think so. They're filter feeders, right? So it's not like they don't have huge teeth. It's not a shark. And yeah, for those of you who support the show, you'll get to see some of the epic 4K footage that I shot. Really happy with how it turned out. And again, it's $10 a month and you get tons of, supporting supplemental content, video and photo every single Wednesday. And that's all on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Hello Crusoe. The word hello, CRUSOE. I also post free things on there periodically. I post little reminders of when updates of this show come out. And you can follow for free. Even that really helps the show. And you can obviously cancel at any time. I don't take it personally. Some people actually join for a couple months and they listen to the whole 25 hours of audiobooks that I have up there, and they cancel. And you know what? That's fine with me. It's still cheaper than getting it on Audible. The finished versions of 10,000 Hours in Paradise. I was so lucky to live in Hawaii when I did. But anyway, we went to the last place in this adventure, the 6th place. So we'd been to Padar Island and saw the green Padar Island spread out before us. We'd been to Pink Beach, which wasn't as pink as I was hoping, but it was still pretty. We'd been to Komodo Island, saw 2 Komodo dragons in their natural environment. We'd been to Makassar, which is this white sand dune thing in the middle of, sandbar in the middle of the ocean, which has the sharks and turtles. And we'd been to Manta Point, which is aptly named because we saw 7 manta rays there. And now we were going to a place whose name I've forgotten, which was fine because it was really rough, to be honest. It wasn't too far from Manta Point, and we get out and they go, hey, sometimes there are reef sharks here. Now I looked down at my foot and I noticed that I had formed a blister on my little pinky toe. And that's not great. So I was like, well, I don't want to annoy it too much. I'm just going to go. I'm very experienced in snorkeling. I've got, 100 hours, hundreds of hours probably snorkeling. And I'll be okay. What I didn't account for was that I'm a bit out of shape. I'm a bit out of shape in the snorkeling department. In the hiking department, I'm very much in shape. In the snorkeling department, there's different muscles that you use, So I got out there and I had my mask and I was doing fine. Everything's fine. I was looking around. I was looking for animals, There weren't that many people. I think only like 3 people got out the boat that time. Most people were tired. It had been, as you may be gathering, it had been a very big day. We'd all burned 3,000 kilocalories. Or whatever, 3,000 calories. The weather was so good, and I'm zipping around. And there's more coral here. It's cool. I saw some cool coral. I took some video. I saw some people doing scuba. Not very deep, but doing a little bit of scuba. It wasn't very deep. It was like 10 meters or something, maybe less. And I popped my head up, and I notice that my boat is gone. My boat is gone, very gone, gone. And then I feel nervous because I'm getting tired. And I'm looking around. I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna worry too much. I'm just gonna start heading. That boat looks kind of like my boat, so I start heading toward a boat. After a couple minutes, I realize I'm not making much progress. I just wasn't getting, obviously, the efficiency that I was getting when I had my fins on my feet. This is my first time doing this in these waters without the fins. So I'm relying on my arms. That's fine. My arm's getting tired. I'm not making much. And I realized that, the current here has just pushed me off course. I run into 2 people who are snorkeling. Thank God one of them had a life jacket. And I said, I'm having trouble. But of course, you have a snorkel in your mouth. So you have to, this is a magic trick a little bit. You have to propel. This is much easier to do if you have fins. By the way, you have to get your head above the water enough so you can take your snorkel out of your mouth so you can talk, so you can say, hey, I'm tired, and I swallow some water in the process of this. Not great. And I'm like, can I hold on to you because you have a life jacket? I'm really tired, and my boat has disappeared. Now, this is why I didn't want to say the name of the company. At this point, I am disappointed in the company. I think they should have kept better eye on us in a place that had current. It's also weird because they were so attentive in Manta Ray Point. In Manta Point, they had the life preserver. We were all following them around. They were very careful, and maybe that's just a more dangerous part of the water. But if you're going to let a customer go in the ocean without fins, I don't know. Look, it was obviously partly my fault taking a risk without fins. Absolutely. Maybe mostly my fault, but I was surprised that I just turned around and everybody was gone. I just felt very surprised. So anyway, I don't have a hard verdict on that, but I'm trying to figure out where I land on that. So anyway, this couple, I think there were a couple, they're like, they're trying to wave down a boat because they're pretty far from a boat too. I don't know, we're like, you can see the boat. It's I don't know. It's like, not a football field away, but almost. And this can happen to you. This is the danger of snorkeling. If you're not super careful, if you don't know the spot, you haven't been to the spot before, the currents can push you faster than you realize. They can really get you off course. And this, of course, happens to boats too. So I'm holding on to this person. I'm like, thank you so much. I'm sorry. Thank you so much. and I put my snorkel back in my mouth because there's water getting into my mouth because I can't, I'm not doing well at this point. But this is embarrassing, so that's why I appreciate if you share this episode because, we need to normalize people making mistakes, especially in the water. And I consider myself a very experienced snorkeler, but I'm out of practice. I haven't lived in Hawaii for over 3 years at this point. The episode that came out right before this one was the 3rd anniversary of me leaving Hawaii. So their boat finally makes it over. And the bummer here was the boat's ladder was screwed up. It was taped up. Apparently it had partly broken. So I had to be a contortionist and lift my 1 foot way out of the water just to get my foot on the ladder. So that was tricky. But I was flexible enough. I was able to get on this ladder and pull myself out of the water. I hand them my camera, which I've been holding in my right hand the whole time. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, it was so stressful, I forgot to tell you, I actually saw 2 more mantas before I realized that I was in the middle of nowhere. I saw 2 more mantas just gracefully circling for a minute. But it was not long before, it was like 5 minutes and I didn't know where I was. And that's just a warning that this can happen. You have to be very, very careful. So I sort of stumble onto this boat and they ask me the name of my boat and the company, and I tell them. And I tell them also that I've swallowed some water, and I reflected on this. The reason I swallowed some water was entirely because I was trying to talk, and I couldn't get my head above the water. If I'd been wearing fins, it would have been a lot easier. It would have been a lot easier to propel myself up. I had been so used to wearing these very good fins. This was the only place I didn't wear the fins. So I had swallowed probably 2 mouthfuls of water in the process of trying to just say, hey, I need help. It's tough. I don't know if you ever tried to do this, but it's really a multitasking project. And I'm also holding my little Olympus camera in my right hand the whole time. I think it would have been a lot more difficult if I haven't gotten lucky and if they hadn't had one of these people was wearing a life jacket, thank God. So it wasn't that stressful for them for me to hold on to them. And they graciously take me. They give me a bottle of water, which is cool, as they ferry me over to my boat, which I swear to God was like a kilometer away. I don't know what happened. I do feel that they were a bit negligent in keeping track of us. I don't. Maybe I'm wrong, but I felt like they're a little bit negligent. And they're like, oh. And I was like, yeah, I turned around and you were gone. And they said, are you okay? And I hand them the mask and thing, and I get back on. I'm like, okay, I'm done. We're good. And people get back on the boat, and we started zipping back over. They said, hey, okay, well, we've been to 6 places. We've been to wherever the heck this last place was called. Doesn't matter. And it's going to take us about 40 minutes to get back to Labuan Bajo, to get back to the thing. And I just relax and I eat the rest of my, what did I keep? Yeah, I kept like some of the tofu. I think I actually had some of my oatmeal left over, and I drank some water, and I calmed down. I was fine, but it was just like, gosh, if that had gone differently, that could have been pretty gross. I mean, there were people around, but it could have been more of a scene. Luckily, I found somebody who, was able to wave down their boat. I do wonder how that would have gone if I'd had fins. I think if I'd had fins, I wouldn't have gotten tired out. I think I was kicking too hard, and I just tired myself out. And looking back with hindsight being 2020, of course, I probably would have put a Band-Aid on my toe, which, of course, there's no guarantee that would have even stuck. My toe being so, part of the problem was that we were being rushed a little bit. I think they were pressed for time in the afternoon. They had a schedule to keep. Yeah. But I was reflecting on all of this, on our cruise back to Labuan Bajo. It's getting into 4 p.m. now. And the whole thing cost about $1.3 million. The ride itself was $900,000 IDR. Now, for reference, a million IDR is about $58, right? So you add about 425,000 Indonesian rupiah for the Komodo park ticket, which they charge foreigners quite a bit. That's like $30 for the park, but that covers 3 islands. So overall, it was about $80 because the rupiah lost some of its strength over the past couple weeks. But usually it's $90 or $80 for the whole thing, everything included, the lunch, the snorkel equipment, and taking you to 6 different places. There are tours that will charge you more. One of the people I met is this sweet young woman who I'd been talking to from China, actually invited me to come with her to this is the part where I'm going to get comments and people are going to yell at me. But I think there's a lesson in what I'm about to share. She was going on a second cruise right after this one. In fact, we sort of docked with another boat. Before we got to the pier, before we got to the port, I should say, we stopped and parked next to another boat. And she was like, yeah, I'm doing the sunset cruise. And I'm like, oh, how much is that? And she's like, oh, it's about the same price as this one. And I didn't feel like having a $200 day. And I'd already seen, a lot of sunsets. Labuan Bajo is an amazing place for sunsets. But mostly, even though she was a very cool young woman, mostly I was exhausted, and I don't think I would have been very interesting company, to be honest. So I listened to my body, and I was like, I'm just gonna go home. I'm gonna take a shower. I'm gonna go home. And I'd heard that they actually give you a ride back to where you're staying. So I get back to the port. They say bye. And we'd already followed each other on Instagram, But, also she was going back to China in like 3 days. So it was like, and this is something that I think we don't talk about enough. I'm being more forthcoming with my personal life than I usually am on this podcast. Usually I talk about personal life stuff on the members only episodes. But I think it's worth talking about in a public forum how you're going to meet cool people. When you travel, you're going to meet cool people, hopefully, very often. And when you're a nomad like me, or semi-nomadic, I'm going to be settling in Bali, you sort of, it behooves you to be intentional about your energy. And I'm not necessarily going to get really excited meeting a cool person and like plan a bunch of like lunches and dinners with them if they're leaving Indonesia in a week or even 2 weeks. I need to invest in people. And hey, call me out in the comments if I'm full of crap here, but I need to invest in people that are actually staying in Indonesia that I can, build a friendship with, or maybe even more, And that's something that if you travel, especially if you travel solo, that becomes more obvious that, you're going to meet great people. And, it's cool. Like, it's cool to have a cool friend for like a week. But when you do that enough times, because people, you never know where they're going to end up. You don't know where they're going to go. You do that enough times and you say goodbye to enough people, you're like, you kind of get, just speaking for myself, you get a little bit weary of people that are only going to be around for a few days or even a couple of weeks. You're like, well, that's cool. Like, we can be friends, but I'm going to be more likely to invest in a deeper connection if I'm on the same island as you. If you're going to be on the same island for long term, then it's like, hey, cool. Even if you're kind of in a, further from me, like, it's much, much, much more doable than if you're going back to China or Japan or Korea or anywhere that I don't see myself passing through in the next year. It makes it harder for me. Am I a cold person for feeling like that? Yell at me in the comments. I dare you. So I don't know. I mean, I joke, I kid, I mean, I think maybe the more I do this show, the more of a smartass I'm going to be, just to stoke engagement. It's tempting. It's tempting. But mostly I want to inspire you to go outside your comfort zone and do these things, to travel solo. The world is honestly very supportive of that exploratory energy. Even places that people are afraid to go. You know, I've met multiple people even in the last week who are like, oh, I don't know if I should go to India. I'm like, India is great. Yeah, it's going to be overwhelming in the beginning if you haven't been there. But I met so many generous, kind people in India and had good experiences. I mean, yeah, if you're using couch surfing, please look at their reviews, look at their references. But I met great people in India. I also met people that were way too excited to take a picture of me in India. But you know, I'll quote Rolf Potts, who wrote a great book that I can't, what was it? Something Vagabond. I'll find the book for the show notes. He says, you know, when you step outside your door, I'm paraphrasing. He says, you know, the world's a lot less scary than you think it's going to be. You know, just don't go to Gary, Indiana. Don't go to Gary, Indiana. Don't go to North Korea yet. I don't think they don't seem ready. But most places are like, people are just like you and me, you know, they might come in a different package. They might pray to a different personality, but sheesh, the similarities outweigh the differences. And that is a hill that I'm willing to die on. Fast boat tour. I would rate it 8 out of 10 stars. Would have gotten 9 stars if they were a bit more attentive in the 6th place we stopped. Would have gotten 10 stars if they gave me the option to do the medium length trek. But overall, an amazing experience. Highly recommend it. If you have the means, it is so choice. Please do it. And I feel that a visit to Flores, pretty much regardless of length, is not complete without some kind of boat tour like this, especially if you can go to Manta Point. There's a reason why all the scuba people go and hang out. Although I didn't see any scuba. It's a distance, you know, you're going about 40 kilometers. It's, you know, in the area between the islands, between here and Komodo. I hope you enjoyed this extravaganza, a very recent event episode of Wanderous. If you enjoyed it, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube. You can subscribe and you can leave a comment. I don't know if you can leave a review on YouTube, but on Spotify, I really appreciate reviews. This show needs reviews right now, full disclosure. And I just appreciate anything that you do. If you send the link to a friend, if you heart an episode, especially if you leave a comment or review, mahalo, mahalo, mahalo nui loa. Or as they would say here, terima kasih, or a big thank you. You could say terima kasih banyak. Banyak means a lot, and it's a word that comes in handy. You could say banyak. You could say orang banyak, which means a lot of people. This concludes your lesson for Bahasa Indonesia. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time on Wanderous. Aloha.